Close your eyes for a second. Actually, don't. You're watching a video, that'd be weird, but just stay with me here. It's a Saturday afternoon, sometime in the mid-90s. You're 14, maybe 15. There's no notification waiting for you anywhere. Nobody can reach you. That's just how Saturday worked back then. The phone is in the kitchen. Unless someone calls that specific phone, you simply don't exist to the outside world for a few hours. And somehow that was completely fine. You probably rode your bike somewhere without telling anyone the exact route. You got lost and figured it out. You showed up at a friend's house unannounced, knocked on the door, and either they were home or they weren't. No text ahead of time. No just a knock and a 50-50 chance. If they weren't home, you just went back, maybe kicked a can on the way. Thought about stuff. God, when did we stop just thinking about stuff? If that mental image did something to your chest, a small tightening, a weird warmth, then this video is for you. Because we're not just going to sit here and get nostalgic together, as tempting as that is. We're going to figure out what was lost, why it's affecting you, and what you can do about it right now. This week, today, even. So let's start at the beginning. There's a specific kind of memory that Xennials carry around. If you're in your early to mid-40s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not just, oh, things were simpler. It's more textured than that. It's the sound of a dial-up modem. It's the weight of a physical map unfolded across a dashboard, your dad arguing with it like it could hear him. It's the experience of being genuinely, completely unreachable, and how that felt not like isolation, but like freedom. You had to write down phone numbers, actually memorize some of them. Your best friends, your grandmother's, that pizza place. Your brain held that information because it had to. No backup system, no cloud. Just your own head, doing its job. And here's a small thing that I think actually mattered more than we gave it credit for: waiting. You waited for things. You waited for a TV show to come on at its specific time, or you missed it. You waited for a friend to call back. You waited for photos to be developed, sometimes for days. When you got them back, there was a ceremony. Some were blurry. Some were of the floor by accident. And you kept them anyway in a physical envelope in a drawer somewhere. Waiting taught you something. It taught you that things had weight. That arrival meant something because absence came first. Now really contrast it with how your brain operates today. Because here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. The average person checks their phone somewhere between 80 and 150 times a day. That's not a dramatic statistic. That's multiple peer-reviewed studies landing in roughly the same place. For Xennials, this creates neurological whiplash. Younger generations don't experience it the same way. Gen Z grew up in this. Their brains developed inside the attention economy. They don't have a before and after. They don't have a reference point for what undivided attention actually feels like. But you do. And that's both your advantage and your wound. Your brain remembers what sustained focus felt like. To read for 2 hours without looking up. What it felt like to have a conversation where nobody was half elsewhere. So every time your attention gets fragmented now, which is constantly, there's a part of your nervous system that registers it as a loss. A small one. A barely conscious one. But accumulated over years, that low-level loss starts to feel like something bigger. Like grief, almost. Like you've been slowly replaced by a less focused, more distracted, perpetually slightly anxious version of yourself. And you didn't choose that. It just sort of happened while you were living your life. Which brings me to something I think is really under-talked about, the cultural displacement that Xennials feel. I want to be careful here because it's easy to slip into "things were better in my day" territory, which is annoying and not entirely accurate, but this is something different. You exist in a cultural moment that wasn't really designed for you. The internet's aesthetic language, the memes, the irony, the short-form everything, the TikTok rhythms, it was built by and for people who never knew anything else. You can participate in it, sort of. You've got Instagram, you've got Facebook, you're here watching YouTube. You're not a technophobe. But there's this persistent feeling, isn't there, of watching a party through a window. Of understanding the words but not quite speaking the language. Of being fluent enough to function but native in something else entirely. You're native in a world that no longer exists. What makes that disorienting is that the world you're native in wasn't just a different era. It was a different model of being human. A model built around presence, patience, physical space, linear time, analog relationships. And the new model, which you live inside of but weren't shaped by, runs on completely different values, speed, quantity, visibility, constant availability, permanent documentation of everything. Those aren't just different preferences. They're almost different philosophies of what a life is for. So what do you actually do with all of this? Here's where I want to push back gently on the way this conversation usually goes. The standard advice is usually one of two extremes. Either delete everything, go off grid, buy a flip phone, which sure, but you have a job and children and a life that runs on digital infrastructure. Or the other extreme. Just learn to cope. This is the future, adapt or be left behind, which is deeply unsatisfying. There's a middle path, and it has an actual name: digital minimalism. A term the philosopher and computer scientist Cal Newport wrote about extensively, and the core idea is beautifully simple. You don't have to reject technology. You just have to be intentional about which parts of it actually serve your values, and ruthlessly eliminate the parts that don't. For a Xennial, this is an abstract philosophy. You have a lived reference point for what intentional attention feels like. You remember it. Which means you're not trying to build something from scratch. You're trying to recover something that's already in you somewhere, just buried under notifications and browser tabs and the psychological residue of 15 years of constant connectivity. And the research on this is genuinely encouraging. Studies on what's called analog restoration show measurable reductions in cortisol, improved mood, increased sense of meaning, and something that shows up consistently, an increased feeling of self-continuity. The sense that the person you are today is connected to the person you've always been. That you're not fragmented. That there's a thread. That thread is still there. It just needs a little quiet to become audible again. So here's what I'm actually asking you to do this week. Just one thing. Not a digital detox. Not a grand gesture. One analog habit, something small, something from before, and I want you to reinstate it deliberately. Maybe it's buying a physical book and reading it without your phone in the same room. Maybe it's leaving your phone at home for a single walk just once to remember what your own thoughts sound like. Maybe it's calling someone instead of texting them. Actually calling, hearing their voice. Remembering that communication used to have texture. Pick one thing, do it this week. Not because the past was perfect, it wasn't, but because there's something in you that remembers a different pace. A different quality of presence. And that something is worth listening to. Because here's the truth, and I genuinely mean this. You're not behind. You're not a dinosaur. You're not someone who can't adapt. You're someone who lived in two very different worlds and had the self-awareness to notice what got lost in the transition. That's not a weakness. That is, honestly, a form of wisdom that a lot of people, younger people especially, are only just beginning to search for. You already know what they're looking for. You grew up in it. So tell me, what's the one thing you miss most? The specific, small, ordinary thing from before that your brain keeps returning to. Drop it in the comments. I read them. And I suspect what you write will surprise even you, because it won't really be about the past at all. It'll be about what you still want your life to feel like. And wanting that? That's exactly the right place to start.